In case you weren't aware, earlier this year, Wizards of the Coast decided to set the D&D world on fire through a ridiculous exercise which displayed an astounding lack of self-awareness. Basically, the company that raked in over $1 billion last year decided that they wanted to try and reach into the pockets of small, independent, third-party content creators who developed adventures for Dungeons & Dragons on the open gaming license. The backlash was swift, it was justified, and that the company has spent the past few weeks doing unrelenting damage control is a good thing for everyone involved. I'll be honest, had I not mentioned it in the Third Age video, I probably would have held off on releasing the Shadowdale one. I just don't have an interest in giving free publicity to a company that couldn't be bothered to care about the people that feed their success until they lost a bunch of money because of their greed. But I also understand that this is, in a lot of ways, a D&D channel, or at least a channel that people expect a healthy amount of D&D content from. So, in order to give the people what they want, while remaining steadfast in my desire to tell Wizards to go shove it until this is all resolved, I'm going to talk about a D&D game for which they can no longer benefit from because you cannot buy Tales from Candlekeep, Tomb of Annihilation as of the release of this video. Released in 2017 and developed by Quebec-based Become Studios, and that's what I'm going to call it because they use it in that way on their website multiple times, Tales from Candlekeep is a digital board game conversion of the adventure in question. These board games exist collectively under the Adventure System moniker. They are based off 4th edition, which is, the best edition of D&D, and are effectively a means of playing Dungeons & Dragons with some friends in the absence of a dungeon master. Considering that the last entry in the series was released in 2019, it seems they have been discontinued to this point. This conversion basically takes that board game and puts it on your computer. There really isn't much more to say about it. At this point, the most interesting thing about this game might be the fact that the license ran out in May of 2022, which is why you can't find it on places like Steam anymore. Game licenses being allowed to expire isn't exactly uncommon, but 5 years is a really short span for a game, especially in the digital era in which games can, in a lot of ways, be expected to bring in some sort of revenue in effective perpetuity. Thanks in part to platforms such as Steam, Good Old Games, and others, a game's shelf life has gone from a few weeks after its release to forever, assuming someone has the patience to type its title into a search bar. And, unfortunately, after actually playing this game, it will become pretty apparent why no one involved was all that concerned with making sure it stayed available. Tales from Candlekeep's gameplay is made up of equal parts turn-based combat and exploration. You control 4 characters, 5 if you purchased a now unavailable DLC, being Artis the Ranger, Ashara the Sorceress, Birdsong the Bard, and Dragonbait the Paladin. Characters possess unique skills and a number of abilities that any D&D fan is no doubt familiar with in order to dispatch enemies and keep themselves alive. New parts of the map are unlocked by standing on connecting tiles and bring with them enemies, traps, and occasionally loot. The one vaguely neat thing about this game is the way that it forces the player to keep moving. See, unless a hero's turn ends standing on a connecting tile, you'll suffer through what's called an encounter, which almost always brings pain in the form of curses, enemies, or traps. That means that looting chests requires you suffer through the ill effects of these dice rolls. In the same way, unlocking a new tile is a great way to earn yourself a reprieve in the midst of combat, but might bring with it even more trouble. You've got to be well aware of what you can stand up against and how much risk you should be taking. Encounters can be cancelled out through the use of adrenaline, a finite resource, so you have to make sure you're saving it until you're truly in a pickle. Overall though, the game's systems are just lacking. Each character's skill tree is small, with dominant strategy setting in very quickly, and the equipment upgrade system is about as arbitrary as can be. Over time, the encounters start to be more annoying than anything else, to the point that I actually turned them off. Not because the game was too difficult with them, not in the slightest, but because you start to realize they're just glorified inconveniences that don't actually add anything to the challenge or gameplay. Enemies are pretty much only defined by how much health they have, and even the boss battles leave a lot to be desired, being easily dealt with by simply throwing all your strongest spells at them. There's basically no progression whatsoever over the course of the game, with each character's skills unlocked from the start, and many of the missions unfolding almost identically to one another. There is a leveling system, but after the first few reward you with extra character slots that allow you to bring all 4 characters into missions, which There is zero reason to bring any fewer afterwards as far as I can tell. They basically serve no purpose. Increasing the difficulty doesn't do anything outside of giving you more gold and making enemies stronger and more plentiful either. The game has a very plastic look to it. At first, I thought it might be trying to recreate the feeling of what the figurines from the board game might look like, but it was after deep meditative reflection that I came to the conclusion that it actually just looks like trash. I will say that the animations are pretty nice. Watching these skeleton dudes run around sure as hell put a smile on my face. Look, I can't keep up this facade any longer. This is one of those games. You know the type. Incredibly one-dimensional gameplay, decidedly lacking in graphical options, a core mechanic surrounding the collection of an exhaustive list of completely pointless materials and resources, and a general feel that this really isn't much of a PC game. None of which should come as a surprise when you take one look at Become's website and learn that they basically only make mobile games, which is, regardless of the fact that it was never released for mobile devices, what Tales from Candlekeep is. This game, in no small way, is depressing. Why it was developed for computer systems is a complete mystery to me, because it has nothing that one would expect of it at even the most basic of qualifications. You've probably noticed throughout this video that the areas basically never change, and that's because they just reuse the same 2 maps for every mission. I swear to God, I haven't been reusing the same 3 clips over and over again throughout the entire video, but you'd be forgiven for being skeptical of that claim. The game is laughably easy to run from a hardware standpoint, but looks like absolute garbage because it very clearly has vertical sync and anti-aliasing issues, which there just aren't even options for in the menu, and I'm convinced this graphical slider is a front because the game doesn't look any different no matter where you set it. There's no voice acting, the music is repetitive, and it's completely devoid of any kind of personality. The entire game feels like it serves no purpose other than to try and siphon money from you, which is fitting considering the attitudes of its license holders. I mean, look at these supposed DLC packs. They're nothing more than gold and resource dumps that exist for the sole purpose of letting you buy your way through the game. How is it that I paid $1 for this and it felt like too much? I get that this is very blunt in comparison to my typical style of analysis, but this game flat out sucks. There is almost nothing redeemable to it. I was bored after about half an hour. It's not that it's just disappointing or underwhelming, it's outright bad. Its gameplay is bland, it's graphically ugly, not to mention technically deficient, and all of that is wrapped up in a neat bow of having zero story or narrative to care about. Seriously, I don't know why this game is named Tales from Candlekeep, considering it doesn't even spend a millisecond in Candlekeep. The entire runtime is spent in Chult, which, all things considered, isn't even that close to the Sword Coast. It's frustrating too because I've given games such as Knights of Pen and Paper some leeway in regards to the fact that while they've been ported to PC, they were intended for mobile devices. And Tales from Candlekeep likely wouldn't have been nearly as bad if it were on a phone or tablet. It would have at least been good for wasting some time with. But the fact that it was created for home systems means I have to evaluate it against other PC games, and when put against that criteria, it comes off looking like a cheap and lazy train wreck. I feel like I should point out that my criticisms are strictly about this video game conversion. I've never played the board game, and as such have absolutely zero ground with which to judge it on. It might be really good, and I hope it is, but all I know is that this game certainly is not. Don't be upset that you can't buy this game. Sometimes mistakes are better left forgotten about. But hey, at least it's a fitting representation of everything that's happened over the past few months, so at least we can take solace in that.